I've discovered that I enjoy learning about the history of World War II, and especially doing genealogy work for those servicemen and women who were reported as being killed in action. I found that about half of them have been added to FamilySearch and attached to a family. All of their records, such as the draft registration cards, birth and death certificates, census reports, they're all in the system, but the actual person hasn't been added yet. So it's been kind of rewarding, and it feels like I'm paying them back for their sacrifice. Just a little something that I can do to show respect, I guess, is just to make sure they're in the system and their memory isn't forgotten. And so what I like to do is just randomly pick people to work on, and try to find their parents, grandparents, great grandparents, and et cetera, and just add them to the family. And so I came across an interesting case I'm going to just share with you. I randomly picked this airplane, and when I mean randomly, I closed my eyes and clicked on something, and it came up with this crew that had been reported as killed in action. Well, there was one survivor. There were 6 men on the plane, and one survived. And so I started on this little project. I had a few days to spare, and thought I'd spend a little time on it. And I just want to share with you some things that I found. So what I'm going to do is go through and talk about all 6 of the men that were on the plane, the 5 that were killed and the one survivor. I think they're all, like I said, heroes of mine, and they deserve to be remembered in some little way. And so before I really get into the video, I want to just show you, I was really curious about the airplane. And so luckily for me, Hill Air Force Base Museum is fairly close to where I live. And so I was able to go down to the museum, and I wanted to look firsthand at what a B-25 bomber was like, just to kind of get the feel for what it would be like. Just use my imagination, what it would be like if I was trapped inside and this plane was twirling and falling out of the sky from 10,000 feet, just to see how hard it would be to try to exit the plane with a parachute, find a parachute and then find an exit. I wanted to just get a visual and see the plane and walk around it. So I'm going to take just a minute and show you the plane, and then we'll jump into their stories. I'm super excited to be going to the Hill Air Force Base Museum. I'm going to be looking for an airplane. It's an old World War II one, B-25 mid-range bomber, the Mitchell. And so I'm kind of excited to see the plane and try to experience what it might have been like as it fell, 10, 15, 20,000 feet. And as they were trying to get out of the plane, I'm just really curious about the plane. So hope you come with me and watch the video. Learn a little bit about some of our heroes of World War II. Well, that was a little embarrassing. I walk into the main area of the museum where all the planes are. There's a help desk right when you walk in. And on the desk, there's a map of the museum and where all the planes are, the names of the planes. And there were a couple of guys in there helping people. I walk up and I'm looking at the map, and one of them comes up to me and asks me which plane I'm looking for. And I tell him, and he starts smiling, and he's like, well, you're basically underneath the wing of it, and it's the one right here. So yeah, I know some planes, but I wasn't familiar with this one. But anyway, as I walked around the plane, I was looking at it in the perspective like I'm inside of it, trying to get out of it as it's falling out of the sky. Is that going to be possible? How hard is that going to be? And I could see right away why 5 of the 6 didn't make it. They're just, it was a small plane, and there weren't like big windows you could get out of. The cockpit was small. I don't know how one of them even got out of the cockpit. The pilot was the one who survived. The co-pilot wasn't able to get out either. And so that was my observation. It was a cool plane, a lot of guns on it, which I thought was neat. But anyway, that was my observation of the plane. All right, so let's get started. I am going to give you some genealogy information along with the story. of my 6 brand new heroes. They were assigned to a B-25 bomber that didn't return from one of its missions. Here is the people on the plane. There were 6 of them, and here's the ones who were reported as killed in action. It was the co-pilot, Second Lieutenant Frederick Whiting of Michigan, the navigator, Second Lieutenant Edwin Wolfe of Pennsylvania, engineer, Sergeant James Goodwin of Texas, radio operator, Sergeant Bernard Koss of Illinois, the gunner, Sergeant Leonard Gunnels of Alabama. Like I said, the pilot was the only one who survived. So this crew, they were assigned to the 12th Air Force, 17th Bombardment Group that was based out of Greenville Airfield. They were assigned to the pilot, Second Lieutenant Thomas Harmon, and he had nicknamed the plane Little Butch. And there was some nose art on the plane based on a Disney character of Peg Leg Pete. And he was wearing a football uniform with the number 98. That was Harmon's number at the University of Michigan, where he played for the Michigan Wolverines. I believe he actually was the Heisman Trophy winner the year before he went into the service. Now, the nickname was in honor of his girlfriend, who was Hollywood actress Elsie Knox. And the nose art was created by Walt Disney, who Harmon had met while he was in California. And this was the first plane with this nickname and nose art. And I believe he was the one who called Elsie Knox Butch, or Little Butch. And so that's what went on the nose of the plane. So on the morning of April 9th, 1943, our crew took off from Atkinson Field in French Guiana, and it was piloted by Second Lieutenant Thomas Harmon. And the flight was bound for Belém Airfield in Brazil. The weather was overcast, and the clouds were in the range of 800 feet to up to 12,000 feet. And our crew needed to fly with using their instruments. About 2 hours into the flight, the cylinder head temperature began to drop, and that was possibly due to ice inside the carburetor. Pilot Harmon began to descend in a spiral to the left when the right engine cut out, and that caused the bomber to go into an unrecoverable spin to the right. Harmon, the pilot, managed to bail out of the cockpit. Now, as Harmon parachuted out of the plane, he witnessed the plane go down into the jungle and crash. It was a horrific crash, and he knew no one had survived. And he didn't see anyone else parachuting, and so he knew that he was alone there in the jungle. And he was actually lodged in a tree with his parachute, and it took him a little bit of time to free himself. And once he did, he reports that he spent the next several days wandering in the jungle, becoming more thirsty and exhausted as each day went by. And he said on the 5th day there was something that caught his attention off in the distance, and it was a glass bottle. And when he got up to there, he found a small trail which led to a small settlement, which was part of a larger French colony, he said. And he stayed in that settlement for a short time, for a few days, recovering and being fed. And he said he even got a hot bath. And then after he was strengthened a little bit, they took him by canoe up to a larger outpost. And from there, he was able to transfer to a U.S. military base. And then from the military base, he was allowed to go back home for a short leave. And that he spent that time with his family, and he met his girlfriend there. And after that leave was up, he was reassigned. This time into China, he was assigned to the 449th Fighter Squadron. He was given a plane, a P-38G Lightning, which he again named Little Butch. This time, Little Butch 2. And as I was walking through the museum, I actually stumbled upon that. I got kind of excited, so I'm going to just show you what the plane looked like that he was reassigned to. So this is the P-38J Lightning, and it reminded me of something out of Star Wars from the looks of this plane. So anyway, this is the plane he was assigned to, and he had done several missions. And in China, he was supporting also the Flying Tigers, their group, and the Flying Tigers. And 6 months after the initial crash in South America, he's in a dogfight there with the Japanese. It was October 30th, 1943. And he had reported a shooting down two of the Zeros, and then his plane is hit, catches on fire. Harmon's able to escape, bail out. He pretends like he's dead. Otherwise, the Japanese would have shot him while he was parachuting. It was a common thing to do, and so pretending dead, he drifts into the water. He makes it to shore. He saves part of his parachute, which I'll tell you a little bit about later. But he spends the next 30 days there in China with. He's injured, from the burns from the plane, and then he's able to finally make it back to a U.S. base with a little help from the Chinese, and he had lost 40 pounds in the process of getting back to civilization, from China. And the war ends. He comes home, and I'm just summarizing a long story. This guy's a hero, but he comes back. Tries to play football in the NFL. He's actually on the team for a little while, and then realizes his injuries, the war have slowed him down, and he's not able to play professional football. But he becomes a professional. He becomes a broadcaster for the NFL, and then he gets married to Elise Knox, his girlfriend, and she actually wore a dress. Her wedding dress was made in part with the parachute that he had kept. And I thought that was pretty interesting. They end up having a few famous kids and live happily ever after in California. Let's talk now about the 5 that were killed. And I'll talk about their families, their siblings, parents, grandparents a little bit. And I'll start by just mentioning when they were young men, teenagers or so. That's about when the Depression started. None of these 5 came from really well-to-do families, and so they all grew up, in humble circumstances. And the one picture that I have of one of their parents is Frederick Whiting's mother, and I'll just describe that to you. She's standing, she's trying her best to smile, but it doesn't seem like she can quite pull it off. And she's holding a flower. The flower it appears like it's wilted down and kind of bending down, pointing towards the ground. I believe that summarizes how they all would have felt, all their parents and their siblings, when they got the news that their family members, these boys, men, wouldn't be coming back. And so let's start with James Goodwin. He was 20 years old when he was killed. He was the oldest boy of 7 children in the family, and he was the first one out of the family members to die, and he was single. The next was Edwin Wolfe. He was 21. He was also the oldest of only 3, though, and he was also the first to pass away, and he was also single. Just to mention, he had one grandparent, too, that was still alive at the time that he passed away. And just backing up to James Goodwin, he had 3 grandparents. The rest of them, all of the grandparents had already passed away, and so they weren't there to mourn the loss of their grandkids. So let's go to Frederick Whiting. He was 22, and he was the youngest of 3 children. He was the first to pass away. And his poor mother, I described her in the picture. Her first husband passed away when Frederick Whiting was only 7. She remarried, and her husband passed away that same year that he did. So his mother, trying their best to smile, she had lost her son and 2 husbands already. And Frederick Whiting, he was married, and interesting to point out that when he went into the service, he was single, but I discovered that he was married when he was in the service, and that his wife was 6 months pregnant, and his child was born just healthy and well, but just a few months after he had passed away, and that child was the only descendant of the 5 that were killed. Going on now to Bernard Koss, he was 20. He was the oldest of 3. and he was the first person like the other ones. He was the first of the family members to pass away for any of the parents, and he was also single. And Leonard Gunnels, now he was the oldest of the group. He was 27 years old, and he, in the birth order, he was the second of 9 children. Now that family had already experienced a loss. It was a baby that was 1 year old. His little brother had passed away, and so the family had experienced a loss. And in his case, he had been married twice. His first marriage ended in divorce. He did have a baby that lived only a few days from that first marriage. And then he was married just shortly before he went into the service for the second time. So 2 of the group left behind spouses. And like I said, a couple of them left behind some grandparents. I totaled up counting Gunnell's brother that had passed away. There would have been 25 siblings out of all of the group, and so when they passed away, 5 of them were gone, and the one baby had passed away. So that left 19 brothers and sisters left behind to mourn the loss of their brothers and their parents, also, and just a handful of grandparents. So that's a little bit about the men that were killed and their families and home life. Okay, so there you have the short version of some of the information that I found about these 5 men and their families and loved ones that they left behind. I will mention, I thought it was interesting, in 1946, they were able to find the plane, and they recovered the remains of Goodwin, Wolfe, Koss, and Gunnels, and they're all buried together in a group grave. The co-pilot, however, Frederick Whiting, his remains were not recovered, and I'm sure that was a big blow to his family not to get that closure. There is several memorials, though, throughout the country for those that are missing in action, and he is memorialized in the East Coast Memorial, which is in New York. It's in a beautiful park. It overlooks the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island, and so if anyone wants to go pay respect to him or those other 4, there is a place where that can be done. I'd like to use FamilySearch, like I mentioned earlier, to keep the memory of our loved ones alive that have gone on before us. And 3 of the 6 were not in FamilySearch, and so I was able to set them up. I was able to attach a lot of these documents to their profile there, add some pictures and some stories and links. So family members, when they're searching through their family tree and looking for military heroes, and they'll find these 6 men that had served, and they'll be able to go there and see, and see the documents and pictures and learn a little bit more about their heroes in their tree. It's something that I like to do just to honor those that have fought for my freedom. And so if you happen to know any information about these 6 men or have any pictures, feel free to go add them. I'm following all 6 of them, so if anything is added, I'll be the first to know. They are my heroes, and I'll be the first to go look what you added and learn more about them. That is all I have for you. I hope this video was a little educational and somewhat entertaining. I thank you for watching, and I wish you all a great day. Bye now.